Hi, Effie. How are you? Good to see you again.
Hi, John. I'm doing well. Very nice to see you too.
Good. You are a distinguished cardiologist and certainly continuing to get a lot of recognition for your expertise in things like artificial intelligence and digital health, and more importantly, the collaborative intelligence, which I think you're credited with having labeled in some fashion. I'm curious that as the issues of innovation, AI, remote monitoring, health economics, et cetera, are all converging on us, how do they really transform cardiovascular care from your point of view? I mean, you're at the front line of actually delivering the solutions to the people in need. I'm curious how that converges on what you do and how you do it.
Absolutely. John, I think you said it exactly right. It really transforms the way we are able to deliver care. I'm going to use a very real life example. Just last week in my clinic, I was talking to one of my patients, and he had one isolated episode of an abnormal heart rhythm. Once when he was at the hospital, very young guy, very energetic, very active. He owns a gym. And his question to me was, well, does this one episode of abnormal heart rhythm commit me to blood thinners for the rest of my life? And after we discussed, we realized that it's going to be an incredible opportunity for us to use his smartwatch, his Apple Watch, as a 24/7 cardiac monitor. And if we ever get any notifications of any abnormal heart rhythms, then we can discuss more and we can personalize his management. So I think that is a great example that shows how remote patient monitoring, and by that, I want to make sure that we are talking the same language. I'm not just referring to the typical remote patient monitoring RPM companies who up until now would send digital scales or blood pressure cuffs. Yeah, I'm referring to wearable devices that are able to capture personalized digital health data that we can then use in our clinical practice, not to react, but to anticipate disease and to enable us to transform the way we deliver care from a reactive to a proactive or anticipatory way. I think that is the key in using RPM and wearables that generate personalized digital health data, and how they can very practically transform care. And this was just one very simple example. Now imagine if we also integrate data from other wearables like rings, glasses, vests, you name it. There's things that have come out for every single part of the human body at this point.
Yeah.
It can really transform the way we understand medicine. Up until now, we've been practicing medicine in a way that treats disease, but with these wearables and digital health tools, we can practice medicine in a way that promotes health instead of treating disease.
Well, when you talk about promoting health, I mean, that raises an interesting question, which is, as the technology continues to be more and more accessible to both, those of us who are in need of health care or in need of monitoring, and much more accessible to you as a practitioner and a solution for some of our therapeutic needs, does that widen or reduce the gap in outcomes between underserved populations, whether they be rural or economically depressed parts of large cities, or does that actually make it easier to help those people get the treatment they need and the diagnosis they need?
Uh, Fantastic question. And it really hits the heart of equitable care delivery. And just like everything in life, nothing is all black or all white. This can go both ways. And that's why I'm going to jump to the solution. And I will say that's why governance and post-deployment monitoring matter when it comes to innovating delivery of care. If we design the AI and innovative solutions in a responsible way and in a thoughtful way, that has all of the stakeholders sit at the table. I'm talking about clinicians, patients, technology, insurers. Then we can definitely be in a position to bridge disparities and inequity gaps, because we can extend expertise, specialty expertise into primary care and rural areas that are underserved. We can make diagnostics and results more understandable and timely for our communities and our patients to understand and improve their health literacy. And we can, like we said about RPMs and wearables, we can enable detection of disease and risk stratification, how we like to call it, in a much more timely manner. But like you said, we have to make sure that we are inclusive in the way we design these tools, to make sure that we, when designing them, we use diverse data that is representative of the communities and individuals that they are meant to serve. There's no point in me using a tool that has only been tested and validated on men. It's not going to be able to predict or serve me the way it has been designed to. And so that's why we have to be very thoughtful in including traditionally underserved groups of populations, women, racial, ethnic minorities, cultural minorities, and give them a very active seat at the table of co-designing, testing, validating, and, like I said, importantly, post-deployment monitoring. Just because something serves a specific community in its testing environment doesn't mean that it's going to continue serving when we deploy it in the real world.
Sure. Well, you mentioned something interesting a little while ago, which was the use of various tools and easy to use tools, easy to find tools, easy to access tools for monitoring, whether they be smart scales today or blood pressure cuffs or rings and watches, etc. I am a well-measured person when it comes to in fact, I usually wear more than one ring, but then I look like a gypsy, and so I decided not to do that for this conversation. But the insight that comes from that is very useful to you as a physician, about me as a patient. But then, secondly, the insight that I've gotten as a digital health scientist, if you want to call me that, is that the underlying algorithms become increasingly important to verify and validate, and because the credibility of your diagnosis is dependent on what the ring says about me. And so what I found interesting is that if I wear 2 or 3 rings, or if I use 2 or 3 Apple Watch applications to track something as simple as how do I sleep, I get 5 different answers. And guess what? They are very different answers. And so in essence, one of the things that I think is important as you as a physician and I as a patient begin to do is we kind of verify the use of the data and the accuracy of the data, because in essence, you can only treat me as well as you can measure me. And if you're measuring me with faulty algorithms, I may not get what I need. So I'm curious if you've got a point of view about that, because you're much more deeply into it than I am.
Absolutely, absolutely. So this could be an hour-long conversation in and of itself. It's a fascinating topic, and it's a very practical topic, because it feels that technology is advancing much faster than clinical medicine and clinical care is able to adapt.
Interesting.
And what I'm trying to say with this is, like you said, you're coming in to see me as a cardiologist and you say, hey, doc, I have all of this data from my ring and my watch and everything that I'm using. Here, you use it so that you can take great care of me. I will say, if only it were that easy for us today. I think things will be different in the future. But today, there is room to cover and opportunity to innovate in the space that will allow seamless integration of this data and processing of this data, so that as clinicians, we can make the best use of it. You can understand that we're all humans, and there's only so much time in our work days. It's impossible based on today's capabilities that we have to parse through all of this wealth of digital health wearable data, wearable derived data, so that we can use it in a practical way to take excellent care of our patients, because we don't have the tools to allow us to parse them quickly and accurately, and in a way that will translate that data into actionable insights. Because we don't have exactly what you said. We don't yet, that's the key word, we don't yet have the validating studies that will translate this data into actionable management steps and insights. I think that I don't see that in general. I'm an optimist. I don't see that as an issue or a hurdle. I see it as an opportunity to innovate and contribute to improving delivery of care. This is a very important gap and middle step that we have to fill, because right now, like you said, we are getting really, really good at collecting an incredible wealth of data, of personalized data. The middle step is, how do we process all of this data in a way that a human, the doctor, can then digest and use to then send back to you and take excellent care of you.
So, well, as you know, HITLAB is at our core an evidence-based organization. We believe very strongly that that evidence ultimately defines that whether or not a solution produces the outcomes expected, produces the economics that it's intended to achieve, and more importantly, is a basis for changing or improving the therapeutic use by clinicians. When it comes to the question of algorithms and data, we've also stepped up and we are in the process of launching the Center for AI Testing and Evaluation, a place in which questions such as, was enough data assembled to produce an accurate algorithm? Does the algorithm actually predict or diagnose the proper circumstances to lead to improved diagnostics? And so, HITLAB, as the operator of and founder of and hopefully deliverer of the solutions, is going to be able to attest to, I almost want to say certify, but that's a pretty strong word, because we believe that's such an important need. So
absolutely, absolutely.
Have to close in a minute. I'm getting pinged here by some of my colleagues that we're having too much fun here.
I know.
But as a clinician, I'm curious, how can startups work with the people who actually practice medicine, deliver solutions to incorporate into your practice flow or your clinical workflow their solutions? Because at the end of the day, a great solution as a standalone is a great solution standing alone. It's got to actually fit into the way you do medicine. So I'm curious how startups can think about and take that step of becoming closer to fitting into your work.
Absolutely. And I'm a huge fan of strategic partnerships and collaborations. And I think that's the key here, is to start building, to transition from transactional relationships where a startup finds a medical center or a clinician, they use their data and that's it, to move to more strategic partnerships and meaningful collaborations. Startups bring agility, they bring bold thinking and questioning of the status quo, and health systems on the other side can bring scale, data, and real world complexities. And that's where the magic happens, when we bring both of these worlds together by co-designing solutions. So having an active seat at the table for representatives from medical centers, clinicians, nurses, techs, administrators, and to co-design tools based on, like HITLAB does, based on the values of implementation science and equity and diversity, like we just discussed about, and to define success metrics, not purely by deployment, not by saying, okay, this is how many accounts we have that have deployed our solution, but to define success metrics based on measurable outcomes across diverse patient groups within that health system that they serve. I think that that would be key.
Well, I'm enjoying the conversation very much, but we're going to have to leave it at that, and we'll use this as the first step of hopefully a continuing dialogue that we can have about so many of these very important topics. And thank you for taking the time, and more importantly, thank you for what you do to help people survive some of the most difficult diseases, which are those of cardiovascular systems. So thank you.
Thank you
Jerry?
so much. Thank you so much, John. Thank you, Jerry.